On today's episode, owner and operations manager of Black Barn Farms, Sarah Lovenuk.
I'm Sarah. I own Black Barn Farms along with my husband Phil, and we do regenerative agriculture farming here on the farm, which is not your traditional type of farming. We do things based more around science and ecosystems and helping the environment thrive. I do everything around here. I do the chores, I do the marketing, I help the animals, I keep an eye on things. It's just you got to be a jack of all trades to do this type of thing. So we don't do traditional farming in the sense that we don't have a tractor. We don't sow barley or grain in the spring. We don't till. We don't spread synthetic nitrogen because all of that is a little bit detrimental to the environment and releases carbon into the atmosphere. So our way of feeding our cattle an extra protein source and a healthier protein source is to grow barley water, which is what this is. So each tray is only 6.5 pounds of barley seed, and we soak it in this sink here. So we soak it for about five hours. And then what we'll do is we'll spread it in the trays. You can see there's some empty ones up here. So we'll spread it out, and it takes about 7 days for it to get to this stage, which is when we feed it. So every day we're doing this for a couple hours a day. You can see this is for a couple days down the road. But what this does is it's healthier for the cattle. When they're being fed grains or corns, it's really unhealthy for their system. It creates a very acidic environment in their body, which means they can get sick really easily. So because this is actually like a microgreen, it's much healthier for them. It's fresh, it's hydrating, it's germinated, it's not actually a seed anymore, it's an actual plant. They can eat the roots. We pull this whole thing out, they get the root matter, they get all the germinated seeds, which are already softened so they can digest properly, and they get all of these healthy green stalks. So we feed that every single day instead of doing the traditional grain fed for the cows, and it actually creates a healthier cow. This is an example of where we've done winter bale grazing. So that's something else that we do that's different than most farmers. In the winter, most traditional farmers will take their herd of cattle, they'll put them in the yard, which is just a fenced-in area around the barn. And then they feed them hay in there as they need it. So when the cows run out, they feed hay in the same spot all winter long. And then in the spring, they'll collect all that because it has manure in it and it has seeds from the hay, and they'll spread it on their field with a tractor. So because we don't do tractoring, we don't want to compact the soil, what we do is something called winter bale grazing. So we actually set up our hay bales in the field in the fall, and we get them all ready and spread out on areas where we think our grass needs the most help. So where it's short, or we're getting too many dandelions or too many buttercups and daisies, which the cows don't eat. Those are all indicators of poor soil, or soil that's not as nutritious as it could be. So what we do is we have the bales sitting out here. The cows will eat around them. They're very messy eaters. So they will have the hay kind of spread out. They'll also be dropping their manure there and peeing there. So the soil gets a good boost of natural nitrogen. And it also causes like a mulch. So it covers the soil, and then that decomposes over time and creates healthier soil and taller grass because there's seeds in the hay. So it reseeds itself that way too. So we are essentially having the cows do all the work for us and causing a regeneration of the soil. And we don't have to use a tractor to do it at all. So we get better results. You can see I'm standing in this area. It's kind of round around me with very tall grass. It's a little thicker than anywhere else. This is where we bale grazed 2 years ago. So during the summer with our cows, we do rotational grazing. So in our field, we'll take some wire and we'll move them every day. So they can't go back where they've already eaten the grass. We make sure they don't eat it down too far. We want to make sure they trample a third of it, eat a third of it, and leave a third of it standing. And that can cause a healthier ecosystem and more thriving of the bacteria in the soil. Language I use every day. I am head of marketing, you can say. So I do all our social media posts. I like to do a lot of educational posts just to make people more aware of where their food's coming from and how we do farming differently. So I have to be able to explain it to people in a way that makes sense to them and that they value. So there's a lot of psychology that goes into it. I have to know my customers and what they value, and word my marketing in a way that they feel connected to it and they feel happy that we're doing it and want to support us. And also when I'm dealing with clients over the phone or through text or anything, they'll call me with lots of questions that I have to answer. It'll be about pricing, it'll be about how we raise them, do we use antibiotics or hormones, and I have to be able to explain everything to them and get my point across. So language is a very important part of farming for sure, because you're dealing with the public, you're not just dealing with animals. We have to make a living doing this, so that is with people, other people. We have to know how much to feed them. So we use math in a lot of what we do with farming. And we usually go by the weight of the animal. So we have to know that this girl, for example, in front of me, this mooch, she weighs about 2,000 pounds. And she needs about 2 to 3% of her body weight to be fed that amount of fodder. So we have to know percentages and multiplication and division to figure out how much to feed our animals every year. And same goes for hay, because we don't grow our own hay and harvest our own hay. We buy it from people locally, and we have to predict for the winter how much hay are we going to need. So we use math a lot during farming to kind of predict what we're going to need to feed these guys, keep them alive, keep them healthy. Hey, Rosie. So my husband Phil grew up on a beef farm just up the road in Oxdrift. So he's always loved animals and worked with them his whole life. And he's known how to do the beef farming. I grew up in the bush. My dad was a logger. So I come from a different background of being self-employed. But he always knew he wanted to do some sort of farming. He didn't like the traditional farming with the tractoring and the haying, and it's so stressful for farmers every year to get their fields done. So when we stumbled upon regenerative agriculture, we thought perfect. And I thought, this is great. I love the environment. I'm all for helping to promote sustainability and animal welfare. So I became a part of it that way. The top one is knowing your animals and being able to care for them, knowing when you have to call a vet, or if you can just keep an eye on them if they're not feeling well. So animal love, I don't know if that's a skill, but veterinary work would be a skill. We definitely need to know math skills. We do a lot of, like I said, knowing how much to feed them. We need to know how much to charge for our beef and our pork. We need to know when we need to raise our prices. So I keep like a budget. At the end of the year, we have to go through it and analyze and make sure, are we making enough money to be sustainable and to keep doing this? So you have to be able to work the numbers and make sure that you're making a living and able to care for these guys longer. And in that sense, another skill is you have to be self-analytical. So you're always learning on a farm. Some things don't work out the way you wanted them to. So you might plan, and in theory, everything seems fine, but maybe your animals don't do so well that year. For example, we tried a different type of pig feed, and it was supposed to be corn and soy free to get away from that monocropping, but the pigs just wouldn't eat it. So even though we got it tested for protein sources and nutrients and everything the pigs needed was in it, they just didn't like it and didn't eat it. So after that, we had to self-analyze and say, how do we do this differently? We should go back to the regular feed just because we know they're healthier on it. So yeah, being self-analytical is a big one, making sure that what you're doing to the environment is helping it, and going back and saying, can we do better if we change some things? So if you are someone who cares about the environment, cares about animals, if you like working outside, if you like the fresh air, farming is probably for you, because it is so gratifying. Every day you're working with them, you're making them happy, it makes you feel good. You're out in the beautiful sunshine, you're getting all the vitamins from the sun, you get your animal therapy. It's just a really good life. And even the bad days, are still better than working in an office, from what I know. So it's such a great way of life, and I wouldn't do anything else, honestly.